CTW Automation here, and in this video we are going to show you how to build a test using our test builder feature in the CTW Probe software. Now there's a lot of things you can use and choose to make a test. You can keep it very simple, or you can make it very complex, giving you a lot of power and control. Don't be scared though, all those buttons, you really build a test and be running in just a few minutes, and you may never build another test again. So in your software, it's this test builder tab, and if for some reason the test builder tab wasn't there, this is how you get it to show up, just so you know. So the test builder, you click on that and a screen like this is going to come up. Now right now we're on the 3 pane, so it's the commands, the test sequence, and then the result. The older versions of software only had 2 panes and you used it like this, but we think this is much easier to use in this format. So just like everybody hopefully is already doing, when you start you want to do some type of warm-up. We have 3 options. The 2 we're going to focus on are the timed warm-up or the temperature. We'll do one of each just so you can see. So you build a test, all you have to do is click one of these buttons and it automatically loads over here into the sequence. So if we look at timed warm-up, and if I just click on it, this shows what's going on with the timed warm-up. So you can see that you have a runtime, 10 seconds, and a speed 10 inches per second. So basically that the beginning of the test, it's going to run the shock for 10 seconds at 10 inches per second. If that's too fast, too slow, you can scroll up and down to make it whatever it is you want. We have to recommend you should always run the shock at least for a few cycles. Older twin tubes were notorious for needing to be run for 5 to 10 seconds so that they could prime. Newer twin tubes are a lot better, but a gas shock as well, you're going to want to run some cycles. Get it. The first thing you do is you want to move the shock. You don't want to be collecting data before you've ever moved it, so something to think about. Now, if you don't want to do a timed warm-up, you want to do the temperature-based, which people using gas pressure shocks, this is probably the best way to go. You want to warm it up to some temperature. So click down here and we can see how fast you want to go. Again, 10 inches. You get to choose however you want. And temperature. We've been doing lately here 90 degrees just because it doesn't take quite as long to get there, and it's a good number to start with. So you decide which one you want to use. It's up to you. To get rid of the other one, just hit the X. So this test is going to start by doing a timed warm-up at 5 inches per second for 5 seconds. So the next thing we want to do is turn on start recording, and that throws over start recording. The temperature warm-up was not collected. We're not going to collect any data during that to save some time and some file size. Now you could collect the temperature warm-up if you'd like to see it, but for this purpose we don't need that. So we're going to start recording. Now that our shock is warmed up or primed, first thing we want to do is a rod force. So I click rod force, so that's the next thing that's going to happen. If I click on rod force, you can see that we have a settle time. Many people have chosen 2 seconds for their settle time. Kind of depends on how much bleed you have in the damper. One of the nice things about the CTW Probe software is you can set up different tests based on how much bleed you have in a damper. Because we know a lot of guys out there have a lot of bleed, so they only need to settle for 1 second and they can go pretty fast from side to side. Now the big rebound dampers, guys running very little bleed in one of their corners, they may have a separate test called low bleed where they may set this to 3 seconds and they want this to run even slower. That way, as the shock's moving from one side to the other, it's not building up a lot of pressure. That's the beauty of this software, is you can make it, tailor it to what you need. You could have 4 tests, 1 for each corner, depending on the amount of bleed you have. But once again, try to keep it a little simple for this demonstration. We have our rod force, and it's going to settle for 2 seconds. So now we want to go and have some test velocities. To run a CVP, if anybody's used to that, 1 speed. So you click test velocity, and you get your velocity. You would do stop recording, and then you would say move to the bottom. So what that's going to do is going to warm up, start recording, do a gas test measurement, run at a speed, stop recording, move to bottom dead center. If we go back into the test 10 inches per second, see a lot of information over here. And this, again, can be scary. Once you start to understand what it all means, it's pretty easy and pretty self-explanatory. First thing we're going to do is turn this off. It's probably going to be gone out of future versions of software, so don't even get used to it. Cycles to reach frequency. It's going to take 1 cycle to reach frequency. That means the amount of time we're giving the machine to get up to speed. You can change this, as you can see, scrolling up and down. Kind of depends on how fast you're going and how hard it is to get there. We have been, in general, using cycles to reach frequency 1 and then running 3 cycles after that. So basically, all total, this will run just over 4 cycles. Select cycle tells us which cycle of data we want to use. So we've gotten to speed in 1 cycle. We've run 3 whole cycles. And here we tell it which cycle do you want to get the data from. The first cycle, the second cycle, or the third. Again, just saying, let the damper equalize. We're going to run 3 cycles, and we're going to collect data from the last cycle. So that's it. That is a quick, easy test. When you're done, you do save as, and you say, give it a name. Give it a name you can find in the future. CTW 10 inches per second. Demo A. Done. So that's a test. Now, let's try to add some items to it, show you how to expand on a given test. That way we keep showing you more and more about the software. Say we run 4 speeds, because we know how important it is to get a full picture. You need to run slow speed, and you need a high speed for whatever bumps you may encounter. So let's say we want 4 speeds. So we already have this test here, which is fine. It's our demo test. If I click this button 3 times, we get 3 more speeds. And all we're going to do is grab them one at a time and move them. And you see that bar shows up. The bar says where it's going to go. So I'm going to move that up there. So here we have it. 4 speeds, they're all at 10 inches. Well, we're going to have to make a change. So we're going to go this first one. Instead of 10, we want to run 1 inch. That simple. We're going to come here. I'm going to turn this button off because that's going to go away. I'm going to run this one at 3. I'm going to run this at 5, and that one's going to run at 10. So basically we are running a 4-speed test at 1, 3, 5, and 10. The 1 inch, the 3 inch, that's going to show us the damper and the bleed areas. You have to remember, bleed in the damper is anywhere from 0 to 2.5 inches per second. After that, you get into the shim stack, and the curve is probably going to stay the same as far as it goes until it runs into a problem. This is the area we really want to focus in. So we have 4 speeds. Now, another interesting feature, hopefully some of you can take advantage of it, is you see right now we're running 1 cycle to warm up and 3 cycles to run. This program, you can change individual tests. We had a customer the other day that built a test, and their test took 11 minutes. We were able to, by reducing the run cycles at slower speeds, able to reduce it to 5 minutes. So we went from 11 minutes to 5 minutes. Cut the size of the file beyond half. So this software gives you a lot of power, and use it to your advantage. We know there's people running multiple speeds at very slow speeds, and they take a lot of time on other versions of software. So 1 inch per second, it's going to get the frequency pretty fast. So we're just going to leave that at 1. We're going to take that down to 1, and because we're only running 1 cycle, we're going to choose 1 cycle. So we've already cut out 2 cycles of runtime, which basically cuts that time in half. For this 3 inch, it's still running slow. Remember, your machine can go likely 30 to 40 inches per second. We're going to cut this one down to 1 cycle, 1 cycle. So already you're cutting that down. The 5 inch, just for example, we'll go 2 and 2, and for 10 we'll leave it at 3 and 3. So you can see you're running different numbers of cycles for different speeds. Obviously slow speeds take a long time to run, fast speeds go quick. So that's again one of those nice functions of the software, is you can really tailor it to meet your needs. So for this one, we'll go ahead and save this again, and this will be, let's see, CTW 10, 5, 3, 1 inches per second demo. Okay, so now we have 2 tests, and you start to see how you build one. It's not that hard, not that complicated, but it gives you a good idea. So now let's try to add a PVP. People are very used to running PVPs. We have our speeds in here, or if you were to open a different test, you want to add a PVP. Rather than having to create all new PVP, you can simply come in and click create a PVP. There it is. Now I'm going to move it up here into the stop recording. So going to create a PVP. It's going to create a PVP from those 4 speeds. Again, if I click on this, we have our PVP calculation. So we have a few choices to make. At 0 displacement is something you can use. It was not available in other versions of software, and don't have that yet perfected. So we want to focus on one of these 3. So if we say peak force, this is going to take the point at each peak force. So for each velocity, it's going to figure out the point at peak force. Now sometimes peak force does not happen at peak velocity. Bicycle shocks, shocks with large amounts of gas pressure, something internal. Peak force and peak velocity may not be at the same point, so you have to be very careful. Same thing with peak velocity. Peak force may not happen at peak velocity. Which one is important to you? So it's pretty neat to understand just how you want to do this. I can tell you that centered at 0 displacement is the way most of manufacturing does. It gives you a very good average. It makes everything far more repeatable. So if I choose that, then I have this window, and this window is plus or minus around 0 displacement. And you know, you should understand 0 displacement is where peak velocity happens. So if you look at your crank, peak velocity is all the way to the right and all the way to the left, depending on if you're compression or extension. So a 1/10 of an inch window is fine. Kind of depends on what stroke you're on, but on a 2-inch stroke, a 1/10 of an inch is fine. And there we have already created a PVP. We'll do save as again, and certainly you can choose your name and demo, and that's a PVP. And we save. So now we've created 1 speed, and then we've created 4 speeds, and now we've created a PVP. The next thing we'll look at is what people used to call a MultiCVP, where you ran the same speed and you were able to make an adjustment in between. So we'll kind of start over here. Get rid of those. And we're going to say we want to run a speed, and then we're going to click on prompt. I'm going to run a speed, prompt, run a speed, prompt, run a speed, prompt, run a speed. So what this is going to do is going to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speeds, and the prompt is basically means it's going to stop and ask you to do something. That's where you make your adjustment. so that you can get in one collection 5 settings. You can see right here we made 5 settings very quickly. You keep adding speeds and prompts, and you could do 10. It's up to you. You could do five runs at 10 inches and 5 runs at 5. Completely up to you. You make it however you'd like. But for this instance, we've done 5 speeds. We are going to, again, at the end, we're going to do stop recording and tell it go down to bottom dead center again. So, again, right now it's going to run these speeds, but let's say we don't want to run at 10, we want to run at 6. I heard that's a magic number somewhere. We're going to run at 6 inches per second. And get basically 5 adjustments all at 6 inches per second so that you can get a good view of what your adjuster's doing, because as we should all know, how much the adjuster changes the damper changes based on where the adjuster is. So if it's fully closed and you go to -2, you're probably going to get a bigger change when it's already open, maybe 12, and you go to 14. So this way you get to see how much an adjustment makes, so you know how many clicks to go, so that at the racetrack you don't waste time. Very important, very important. This has nothing to do with telling you what damper to run. It tells you the damper you have, the best way to use it. So we've made this test, and what happens is it'll run the speed, the dyno will stop, and you'll get a little prompt on the screen. And the prompt says select OK to continue. So you make your adjustments, you click OK, and it goes to the next speed. So again, we'll call this save as, and we'll call this CTW, and I would call it 5 adjustments at 6 inches per second demo. There you go. So already created 4 tests that I can think of that do different things and show you how to use the software. Now the very, just another neat thing about our software, if I do open in the folder, now this is in documents, so documents, CTW tests, we've just made these tests, and they're really just files. Think of them maybe as Word documents. You can attach this to an email and send it to somebody. If you like your test, you can send it to somebody and say, hey, run this. We can make a test for you and send it to you. They're all individual. And that's the very good thing, is we have many occasions actually develop, somebody had a problem with a test, they could send it to us, just attach it to an email, send it to us, and we can go back and change it or fix it, email it back, they throw it right back in that folder, and they can run it. So one of the things, again, the software breaks those tests out of the software so that they're not all clumped and you can't get them out. Very neat feature. So all of these tests end up coming over in here to the execute page. So how do you load a different test? Pretty simple. You just do that, and which one do you want to run? Say you wanted to run the, let's see, 5 adjustment test. Well, that's already loaded. That's not fair. So we'll run this one. Open up. You can see it loads over here. It shows you the speed you're going to run so that you know, okay, I know what it's going to do, and you can go from there. So that's how we use our test builder. Now a little later we'll show you a few more features from it and show you how to add notes pages and some other nice features that just continue to build on your ability to do more and more